and this is our first run. Let's go.
Oh, all right. We're going now. We're
Yeah,
doing it live.
we're
All
doing
right,
it
cool.
live. We're running it back.
Nice.
Fuck it.
Do we want like an intro or something?
Yeah,
No,
let's do an
we're
intro.
let's do it.
I'll
Hold on. Let me
start
just
off.
hold on. Let me get the music.
A drum roll. Ooh,
All right.
fancy.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know, right?
So, what's up, everyone? I'm Eli, and I have Archer and Volks with me for the PDH server podcast episode number 1.
Ooh.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
All right. So, I mean, we're really just here to shoot the shit about everything really our server deals with. We're a server that we're the project development hub, basically just a place to network with creatives, find teams to work with for your creative projects and everything like that. So
Yeah, I hate to cut you off there, Eli, but do you want to introduce us real quick? Because the audience knows who you are, but they may not know who this weird robo guy looks like and who this Archer fella is. So
why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
oh, okay. Thank you, Eli. I'm Volks. I came on this server a little bit after, in like its infancy, I want to say. I'm running a project called Skyfall right now. It's developing at a reasonable pace. My main goal with it is to eventually get it published as an actual light novel, though. I have an artist I'm working with very closely, and we're shooting for hopefully the first real draft of the first complete story done by around like July, August. So that's just with the writing. The illustration's going to probably drag it into September, but hopefully we'll have something ready to be published by the end of the year, though. So that will be very exciting. I'll hand it over to Archer. Archer, why don't you explain to the nice folks listening who you are?
Hi, hey everyone. I'm Archer. I created the project development hub. What was it, like 3 months ago?
Wow, 3
I am
months.
the creator of a couple of projects on PDH. My novel series, Save State, which is basically Tron Sword Art Online ripoff, but I don't like to describe it that way because that makes it sound bad. I have another series, Sandcastle Kingdoms. It's a comic series that is currently on development hiatus because I'm working on a submission for a contest for Webtoon. Some people might already know what that is. It's basically just like a short comic series, like 3 to 5 chapters, and just has to be like either like mind bending or romantic in some sense. And so yeah, I'm using that to try and like build up steam for my other projects. I have another project in here, Starship Alexander, is also planned to be a comic manga sort of, but its progress is a lot slower on that because I'm trying to narrow my focus a little bit more.
Sounds good.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
suppose if we're gonna run down the list, I'll do it for myself real quick. I'm Eli. I'm basically just a writer. I joined the PDH, jumped on board right when Archer told me about the idea, and I just wanted a place to talk to other creatives. And I'm writing a novel series, hopefully called Songbird, and I'm just here to chill and talk and take criticism, give criticism, all of that. And yeah, we're doing this podcast because we figured we talk so much in the server that people would be interested in us actually discussing. Um, so how does everyone feel about moving on to the first topic of media discussion?
Oh yeah, go for it, man.
Oh yeah, you've got this handled. You've got a good handle on this so far.
The reins are firmly within your grasp,
I
sir.
appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
So
no problem.
I think the number one thing that always comes up in the PDH casual chat is Ruby, like constantly. It's always there.
Yeah, a lot of people that I recruited from in the early goings of this like came specifically from a like Ruby fanfic server
Right.
that like has since changed its sort of goal. I don't know what it's doing right now because I left like shortly after the last like project stream ended, but that's sort of like the environment that inspired me to make this. Is basically, oh, these guys have a huge uh, pool of people that are interested in like creating this new like property. It's incredibly tied to another property, but it's they've got a lot of people involved. So I think like, hey, maybe some of these people have like their own personal things they want to get done, and maybe I could help them with that. Maybe I could bring some people over here and show them like a good environment and some good people who can help them get their spread their wings and get their thoughts out on paper.
Yeah, and it seems like it turned out pretty well, especially grabbing people from, you know, a server where people are already working on projects that may or may not be created for that server, but especially bring
Yeah,
them into a place where they can work on whatever they feel like they want to. Vox, do you have any knowledge of like all of that
Oh yeah, I
entire like
was.
Ruby?
Oh yeah, I was on. Yeah, I was on that server actually with
Really?
Archer. That's how. Yeah, that's how we met. I left before Archer did, and it was mostly because I had creative differences on the actual direction of the project. I was actually slotted in to write volume 3 of the what essentially was a rewrite of the entire show, and I was not very happy with how discordant everything felt. It was a very sort of like too many cooks situation, and it overall just felt like we're working so hard to make a fanfic,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, like what amounts to a fanfic, they were very ambitious. If I remember correctly, they were thinking of doing like a visual novel release sort of thing, complete with
I mean
voice actors
there
and
were plans to
everything.
like actually do like 3D animation for it, which
Really, that
yeah, we had like 3D animators that that might still be what they're trying to do now,
That's kind of
but
nuts.
they yeah, they did have
good.
like they had like huge like channels for like resources for 3D animation, and I'm just like I was like sitting here thinking, all right, there's a lot that we're trying to do at the same time. Maybe we should decide what it is that we like want this project to be
It
first. And that was a tough thing to try and like nail down because whenever
it
I brought that up, it seemed to come up about very vague concepts of like the
oh
kinds of like community outreach that they wanted to do with the
right,
project, not so much
yeah,
what
and
the project itself was going to do.
Yeah.
it also felt very like if I'm being honest, it felt incredibly disingenuous, especially with some of the people on there. It felt like they were doing this to like get back at the creators of the original show. And like I understand that like some people have disagreements with where Ruby has gone as a show,
Mhm.
and like I've expressed my discontent to that as well. But the thing is I don't let it get to the point where I'm literally making things to just be a giant middle finger to the people who are currently running the
Sure.
show, because I just felt like I was like, guys, we're not going to make something good if at the end of the day all we're aiming for is just to be better than that. Because at the end of the day, we're going to make the same mistakes. That was also my biggest problem with the project as a whole. It didn't feel like they were actually solving any of the core problems or issues with Ruby. It just felt like they were just slavering another coat of paint and going, well, it's my paint, so it's better. So
That was one of the problems that I tried to address mostly is that we we needed to understand like what there were things that about Ruby that we agreed we didn't like or that could have been done better, but we needed to address the why could it have been
mm,
done better, why
Yeah.
were they did we feel like they were lacking in some quality. And I
yeah,
think that was the thing that I tried to
that's
push the most, and it didn't really resonate as much as I wanted it to.
yeah. Like if I'm being honest, like some of the it just didn't feel like the themes were connecting. And that was like it was that combined with just like they were reaching for the stars and they did not have a step stool to step on. It
It
just
felt very
it
much like the original Ruby, like
yeah,
where
and
it
like
started.
but like with that there was at least like the feeling of like these are a group of friends who are sitting around and like making something they absolutely love. And to be fair, that's actually one of the charms of the show that I even though it's sort of like that feeling is sort of lost, there's still a ghost of that. And you feel it sometimes and you're like, "Oh, all right." Yeah, no, I remember what started the show. It was passion for something that they loved. And that was
Yeah.
the biggest problem with Cherish was that in the fact that it wasn't for something you love, you hate it. you hate it so much you're making a property to fix it. And I was like, that's not how good things are made.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just you're going to make something that's going to feel hollow, and it's going to be like parody or satire. Even actually, satire would actually be a better word to use in that sense. But I felt like they were also unwilling to look for other things to inspire, to draw inspiration from. One of the things that I kept hammering on Cherish to actually draw inspiration from was actually from a book series I'm reading right now, actually called The Horus Heresy. And the reason therein was I felt like there's too much of this. Grimm are a threat on the world, but it's never addressed what happens to Huntsmen once Grimm are gone. And that should have been that's a definite thing you could draw from and go, yeah, so what do we do once this is over? And that's like an interesting question, because then you get interesting answers from like, ask Ruby. That's a great question to her. It's like her entire life is focused around like being a huntress. Like, okay, what are you going to do once it's over? Like when there's actual peace. Do you want actual peace, or do you just want eternal war? It's actually
that's something that like has that like we did sort of like address that in terms of like the end game, where we were trying to figure out like what did we want? Do we want like all the Grimm to be gone at the end? Did we want there to be this? Did we want the Grimm to represent this sort of like, oh, there's always going to be like some sort of like discord? As long as there's discord among people, the Grimm will represent that. Or do we want the Grimm to like be gone at the end, and for the only thing threatening people to be other people? That was something that like I don't think we discussed enough, but we did make attempts to discuss it in terms of like what did the Grimm represent like thematically for our characters.
Yeah, exactly. I felt like a good thing that it represented was the like Grimm to me represented the fear of the unknown, or the fear of like the fear of fear itself, right? Grimm are drawn by negative emotions, and as such, I almost felt like it was a personal headcanon of mine. I wasn't sure if it was in Cherish, but they were literally like, they not only were drawn to it, they eat off of it. They feed off of that fear.
I think like that's what we made it in Cherish was that like they were like made of fear. They were made of like this ethereal. Basically, we had aura, which was powered by human emotions, and the Grimm were made out of the antithesis of that, like the substance that was made from like fear and anger and excesses of negative emotion, as opposed to the emotions that powered aura.
Right.
Yeah. But then you could have gotten to some of the more interesting aspects of that, right? When do negative emotions stop, and where do positive emotions begin? Because then you could get into some really interesting kinds of Grimm. Like, one of the ideas, again, like drawing from 40K, because that's one of my, I guess you could say, addictions at this point. There is a concept of the plague god Nurgle, and the idea of despair and plague and rotten disease, depression being the main themes around that, basically eldritch horror. And I figured like you could apply that to Grimm as well. I mean, look at the apathy. That's a sick ass Grimm. Expand on that. Expand on the idea that there are Grimm that aren't dangerous because they're a combat threat, but because they are an actual like emotional or morale threat. Of some other kind. Like, because then you get into the interesting aspects of like, because I was thinking this was going to be a visual novel. You don't have Grimm being a big, huge threat that like are in hordes and whatnot, and like you have sick ass fight scenes, because we're not Monty Ohm. We're never going to replicate that. What I think would have been a better way of handling that would be structuring them like my other addiction, stand battles from JoJo's. Grimm themselves aren't defeated all the time by just force of arms. It's by utilizing semblances, dust, and aura in interesting ways to actually overcome their foes, instead of just a deus ex machina. And I felt like, go ahead, Eli.
So I feel like these are all like really good ideas and really cool ways you could go with these story. And all politics aside about what may or may not have happened in that other server, because I have actually no idea. I've only heard of like the residue of all the drama.
Oh yeah.
And like I think that's sort of like what I intended, is that I don't really want to fill this server with like a ton of like the
Oh
personal
yeah,
drama that occurred. Because I was in like I was in a couple of different like servers with this purpose, and like Cherish was the tamest one that I was in.
Really?
yeah.
Like compared to like some of the other shit that I went through, like
Yikes.
it got like really bad at
That's
points.
it's partly why I stopped, like, for the most part, writing anything within that setting and in that show, because it's just like you see how, like, and it's weird. Most fandoms, when you encounter them and you try to critique them, the critique is often taken badly, or it's just like, well, I don't know what you just don't like the show. Ruby, it's the opposite. It's self-hating. It's self-hating in this like masochistic way,
It
and I
eats
think it's
itself from the inside out.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it originated because like the original show when it first dropped, it wasn't great, but it was still fun,
It was really
right?
cool.
You could have fun with it, and I think like this is actually something I actually like. I maintain to this day, and especially now that Ruby has a higher production quality. The reason why that like you have critics who are self-called Ruby fans, and the criticism around Ruby is so like vitriolic.
Mhm.
I think it's because it's indicative of the rest of anime. Ruby is almost this weird mirror into what shonen anime is actually like.
What do you
Have you ever heard of what was it? Cal, Control Alt Delete, the gaming comic.
I heard of it.
Sort of like what was it? Penny Arcade, right?
Okay.
Almost like a parody of it. And a lot of people just hate this comic. And you wonder like why? It's nothing really special, but then you start digging into it and you start sort of like examining it a little more, and it's almost this weird parody or satire of game culture, where it's just like almost a perfect mirror of like the worst aspects of gaming. And
So
it's not that Ruby is the reflection of like the worst parts of anime, but it definitely exemplifies the tropes that you find within it. Because again, these guys are, no offense, amateur writers doing something they just love,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think ultimately what that reflects is that these are also the flaws you find in most anime.
Okay.
Like the flaws that you find in Ruby are not unique, and in fact they persist through most other anime.
So basically
Like
what you're saying is that Ruby is so like accidentally, unknowingly tropified that all all of the problems that other anime may have like one or two of, Ruby has all of them. And so
it's
in
I
a
think
way
I
it's
don't
like
even
a
think it's like
meta
unknowing. I think
commentary
it's
on
like
the
it's a
genre.
the fact that they're like
it's a
so.
it's a
Oh, you go ahead.
perfect sorry, it's a perfect satire of anime, and it doesn't even know it. And that's why I think like Ruby
Okay.
like enrages people so much. It's why you have channels that are dedicated solely to like people rage and hate watching Ruby. It's like even worse than like Sword Art, where there was like entire channels that blew up overnight just mining the hate out of Sword Art. You see it towards Ruby, and it's like you reflect on it and you go, well, hang on. Like, if you really look at the other problems that are in here, like it's nothing really unique. It's nothing like I would call special, right? Because
It's
ultimately,
like it's a combination of a lot of things. I think the biggest problem that comes across is that like Ruby, it's not just that Ruby has all these problems, it's that it has so many elements that's like
mm,
rolling around at the same time.
Uh-huh.
And
you're
because of the way that it's like because of the way that it's paced and because of the way that it's written and structured, it is impossible to really give all of those like aspects the time that they really need to like expand and
grown.
be
Yeah,
explored.
I think like again like that's also very indicative because like think about it this way: imagine if Ruby had like anime style flashbacks, right? Like every time like someone explains aura or explains this event, we have this like anime cutaway where they go through an entire other scene of that thing being demonstrated or that thing being shown. Like
Sort of
almost
like
like
a
my
montage like way of showing not telling sort of thing.
yeah, it's actually my biggest critique of anime. It's why I just dropped My Hero and just read the manga. Because the My Hero anime is just rife with fucking flashbacks.
Yeah,
And
because nothing makes sense when you're cutting material to
Yeah, like if you
make the
actually
weekly deadline.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
because like it's because they need the like they only have like so much time to they have to put out these like one episode a week. They have to make sure that they have the 23 minutes of like footage, and especially when you're making something as like action heavy and as animation heavy as My Hero, you have like a lot of like hardcore animation that you have to do. So
Oh yeah.
anything that'll like cut on the time that it takes to like get an episode out so that you can like put your best effort into like the scenes that need it. That's like that I believe is the idea behind like why especially shonen anime use like flashbacks so much. It's a time saver and
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah. I'm 100. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, Archer.
no, it's fine. I was done. You go ahead.
All right. Now I feel bad. Yeah. I 100% agree. I actually did a little experiment with My Hero actually, just to kind of test a theory. I actually skipped over all of the flashbacks that were in an episode. It was during the tournament arc, and what I noticed is that in the fact that like the arc actually, particularly the episode I watched, it was definitely shorter, but then I actually like cut it out. It's like, oh, it is sort of cut like in paste, that sort of weird way Ruby is. And I think that's the thing with Ruby. It's almost a anime without flashbacks. So I feel like if you just put flashbacks in Ruby, it would actually work.
I mean, Ruby certainly does like have a lot to explain, like between its 3 magic systems and its lore that it keeps updating like every new season, by retconning the previous season's lore. It does. I think like actually having something set in stone instead of like just continuously making up new things as it goes along would actually help it ground itself, sort of.
Yeah. That I agree with. I absolutely
Because that's the
agree
one
with.
thing I noticed, like, because I'm kind of writing a script where I just like go over like Ruby in detail, like I'm like a video script, and like I think it's just sort of like closure for me, where I want to like get this, I want to get this out of my life, and I'm gonna be waiting until like the show is over to like release it, but I do like that's one of the things that came up when I was like going over like volumes 4 and 5 is that like man, they just had this lore here. They had this like basic lore setup, and then they only kind of sort of went with it in the next volume, and then just like but mostly wrote a new thing. And then in volume 6 they did the same thing where they just invented a new lore to kind of like paste over the old lore. And that just seems to be the thing, is that they don't really know what kind of story they're trying to tell, and it keeps getting more and more far away from the like main characters and from the story that they started telling in the beginning. It's a lot like Samurai 8 in that sense, where like the lore kind of overtakes the plot in that sense.
See,
That, you know what that reminds me of a little bit? It reminds me of the prequels, actually.
the Star Wars prequels?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, like the Star Wars prequels. It reminds me a lot of how like episode 1 is hated so much, and like I never like, beyond the stilted acting and the bad writing, like from a plot structure perspective, like everything kind of like sort of works. And then I realized like what really makes it bad is that in the fact that it's taking all this time to explain everything. And that's the problem. When you open that door, then the next one has to like keep going on that deep lore. And unless you're committed to that and you have characters that can explore that efficiently, then there's no point of doing it. Or
yeah, that was like
you need to fully commit to it.
Yeah, that was like the whole thing, is that like I watched Phantom Menace and I realized like they were trying to make 2 different movies. They needed to make like the movie about the Trade Federation and Naboo and like the politics stuff, and they needed to make a movie about Anakin, but they couldn't mesh those 2 things together in a cohesive way, so they just told both stories at the same time and hoped nobody would notice.
And then they just had Anakin fly through like a trade barricade and blow up a mothership for some reason.
And
because
this
he's the
pod
chosen
racing.
one.
Because he's the chosen one. There's no chosen one in the original trilogy, for the record. Barely any mention of a prophecy. I think
there was no prophecy. It was just
there was none.
Yeah, I think the only thing from the prequels that they mentioned in the originals, in like the original,
your father was
the
a
first
great
movie
Jedi.
was the Clone Wars.
Oh,
and that was like a thing that they didn't, that like even George Lucas didn't really know much about until he started writing the prequels.
That makes sense. I mean, the man is like, quote unquote, master of retcon. So,
yeah, that.
Are we about to get into the Star Wars discussion?
No. All right,
the Star Wars discussion is something that we can save for a whole other episode.
Yeah, no. Look. Let's be real here.
Several TV shows.
Yeah.
There's so much we can talk about.
9? What are you talking about? There's only 6 Star Wars movies. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm just gonna say right now,
there's only
the best
3 Star Wars movies.
is Republic Commando for the original Xbox, and that's it. I'm not gonna be convinced of anything else. That was the best.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah. I mean,
what about Star Wars Bounty Hunter? That was really good.
I don't think I played that.
I haven't played a lot of Star Wars games. Is the problem.
I remember getting that game after I got my tonsils removed. Like my mom got me Star Wars Bounty Hunter, and I just played that for like 2 weeks straight while I had my tonsils out. It was fucking awesome.
Maybe I might do the same when I get my tonsils
out. But anyway, yeah, no. Back on topic.
So to wrap up this whole Ruby thing, I just want to talk about like my relationship with Ruby, because it's definitely not as in depth as your guys's. I never joined.
Yeah, we've had our lives touched by Ruby, and not in a good way.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? My life is still being touched by Ruby.
Jesus.
I don't like it.
So, for me with Ruby, the number one way that I found out about Ruby is I listened to the Drunk Tank, the Rooster Teeth podcast that had been going on since like 2005 or something.
Yep, and
and Monty and Miles and stuff like that would come on the podcast and just talk about it. Sometimes they kind of made a big deal out of it on the podcast, and then they ended up like hyping it up for the release, so I got a first membership to watch it. And specifically.
I remember the original price for first memberships.
It was
like
back $15, something like
it was
that?
$15. It was $15 for a year.
For a year.
You just like you would pay for it. Back in my day,
$15 would give you a first membership. So
back when we walked through 6 feet of snow uphill both ways.
Back before the coronavirus.
Back when we watched Newgrounds.
Oh yikes! So, I got a first membership to watch it, and I watched pretty much weekly all the way up until, spoilers for Ruby, for the record. I don't remember which season this was, and
who cares?
Yeah,
I can assure you I do.
Okay.
It's okay, nobody cares.
Oh shit.
We've
been joined.
A couple people have joined in.
Ooh,
oh dear, who let the peasants in? It's fine, just stay on target.
Anyways, so essentially, where was I? I watched all the way up until what's her name? Pyrrha, right? When she died?
Yeah.
And then we got teased for like that next season with like Yang on the train or something, and that's all I remember. And I had a perfectly fine time consuming the show, even though I didn't think it was that good. And then it just exited my life after that.
Wait, I don't remember the train. Yang on the train. Wait,
I barely even remember it.
I think she was on.
That might have been like volume 6 or
no. I think that's volume 4 because she was
at the beginning.
What was Yang wearing?
I have no clue.
What was she wearing?
I have zero clue.
Her outfits all look the same. There's no way to distinguish them.
It was probably 4 because if you didn't watch it anymore, it probably was in season 6 where they were on the train.
They were on the train for like an episode, and then that was it. The train was gone.
Yeah.
There are no trains on Remnant.
And they weren't sitting in a fucking house for a whole fucking season. It's like, God.
Stay on target. Stay on target. Yeah.
I'm taking notes for my eventual overly long analysis of everything that I love and hate about Ruby.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be making like 10 videos about this.
Yeah. All right. So, swiveling on, you wanted to move on to the next topic. I take it.
Yeah.
So moving on from to an even like less. Are we still in media, or do you want to jump to story writing?
It's up to you guys. What do you guys want to talk about? Media, we can do
Ruby is like a good jump off, because we have like a couple of us have like experience with with writing and with around Ruby, and with being like inspired sort of by like Ruby's like flaws and the things that it does well. So I think moving on to like how we write is a good place to go.
That would actually not be a bad idea, considering that, in the fact that like a lot of the reasons like why I got into Skyfall was that, in the fact that like Cherish, it was an attempt to rewrite Ruby, and then I just kind of went, yeah, but I could just do something original and I wouldn't be bound by having to make it this property. So like that was like a lot of the things in Skyfall are just basically like elements from Ruby I took and just like tinkered with until it was something different. Like Aether, for example.
Right.
Aether is essentially at its barest bones Aura, but I made it a lot more esoteric in its feel. It's not necessarily defined by one thing or one school. There are many other ways and esoteric abilities you can use with Aether, and I wanted that to be on purpose because, like Aura, it's very personalized and very realized by the self. So therefore, the powers therein aren't dictated by just like, oh, it's a shield and it can enhance your strength. No, it's whatever the person who was using Aether decided, I need help doing X. And that's how you get like the semblances, i.e. curios, entered into the mythos of how Aether is developed. Curios being like quirks that people develop with Aether that are wholly unique to them. You have like repeating sort of types of quirks, but no curios. But there are no two curios that are exactly the same. So like for me, I took Ruby and I like examined what I like from it, and then added, subtracted, and multiplied the elements therein until I got something so different that I just had to call it something different.
Right.
Because at that point there was no reason to continue with it.
So that brings up a quote I actually put in the in our discussion topics, that good artists take and great artists steal. I've heard this before and I've had no idea what the hell it meant. And recently it's starting to get a little bit clear for me. But and what do you think about it? You know, having actually taken elements from other stories and putting it in your story.
Oh, it's 100% true.
Yeah.
It's 100% true. And you shouldn't be ashamed of it either. Like, you are going to have to honestly look at things that inspire you and take elements therein. What separates the good and great and bad artists is how you take those elements and make them your own.
Okay.
Yeah. That is sort of like how storytelling in general is that like you are inspired by other things, either in other stories or in your real life, or just like take inspirations from something that you've experienced and put it through the lens of your experience. Like, what did you come out of that like thinking? Right. What did you come out of that feeling? And then you communicate that through like your characters and your world. And at least that's how I like tended to write. The first thing that I like actually wrote for this like other like project was like the magic system. I took like the base elements that we needed to have. We needed to have like a 3-part system. We needed to have dust, we needed to have aura, and we needed to have semblances. So I thought of, okay, what's the connective tissue between all 3 of them? And I started thinking about what it means thematically, what they each mean, how I can like build character off of them, what each individual's power set says about their characters, what like the existence of dust would do for this world. And so I was like building off of that, and I forget how long it was. It was like a 10-page thing. It was like a really long overview of the ending result, but it was something that it was the first real thing that I put thought into when it like came down to this system. I still intend to use that for something, although probably a more rudimentary version that isn't as complicated, because I ultimately like, I don't think the only reason it was as complicated as it was is because I was using a pre-existing system and just refining it and like expanding on it. So yeah, I wouldn't have done as much work if I didn't already have like a bunch of pieces that I was like obligated to use. But yeah, I think that in general, like using your own experience to reinterpret how you go about taking inspiration from other sources is pretty much how most, if not all, writers write.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think you got into something awesome that I was going to bring up talking about this quote. The way I've come to understand this quote recently is that when it says good artists take, great artists steal, I think actually I misattributed the quote. It's good artists borrow and great artists steal. I think what it comes down to is that what separates the good from the great is that not necessarily your how original you are, right? I think you had a quote in the chat recently when we were all just like copy pasting quotes that nothing is original anymore. It's all about execution. It's all about how you deliver the story. And
that was just like my quote, by the way. I didn't like take that from anybody.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I think it's 100% true. When it comes down to stealing and borrowing, great artists know how much is too much to take and how much is, let's say there's like line items, right? If you look at any given like scene or element in a story, let's say someone very classically murders someone and feels like some sort of sadistic pleasure, right? Well, you can steal the murder and then you can steal the reaction. And great artists know that those are two different things. And great artists know that when you steal it and try to put it in your story, you're stealing two different items. And then if you just copy paste them into your story, you're not even stealing it. You're not making it yours. It's not going through your creative process. So great artists take the murder idea, very unoriginally, right? Take the murder idea, and instead of having that character, let's say the objective is the same. They want him to be evil. Instead of feeling like some sadistic pleasure, they feel like self-righteousness, right?
Yeah.
That's a different creative process, and that came to a different conclusion, just like you were talking about, Archer, where they're stealing the idea and then running it through their own creative process and coming out with some conclusion that fits their story, the way they want to write, the way they want to execute better than they would have done, than someone else would have done, right? Someone who isn't as interesting a writer, something like that.
This is a very good topic. Sorry if I'm interrupting. I just want to say, so like, for example, my project, Vengeance Upon Fate, it's definitely inspired by a lot of works like ReZero, mostly Shield Hero, mostly because like when I first started watching the show, I'm pretty sure I told people here I had very high expectations and I enjoyed, the heck out of the first 4 episodes. But afterwards, it just really went that one direction everybody feared, especially like the people who didn't know about the show before, like myself. And I was just so mad. I kept thinking to myself, like, when is the right show going to come out? When is that one show going to come out that does not do stupid things? And that's where I just like, that's it. I gotta get on my feet, and that's where I started writing. Also, another thing I wanted to talk about. I know, like, if you notice, a lot of these shows, like, for example, Sword Art Online, they started off great, or what we thought was great, and they went to crap because of a lot of poor decision making, a lot of, useless, fan service, this and that. But it makes me wonder, in Japan, that stuff actually appeals to people. Like, they buy that stuff. Like, if it doesn't have all that weird stuff in it, a lot of people wouldn't buy it. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? I always want to. I felt like I should bring that up. Like, what's the
Well, I don't
borderline
think fan service is bad.
Oh, so essentially the question we're talking about right now is fan service and how it works
I
in the story.
mean, not just
whether
fan
it fits.
service. It could be like cringe material, like overused tropes. Because apparently in Japan, people crave that. That's what I learned, and that's why they add all that stuff into it because it sells well. Like, I want to know, what's the borderline between that and making or keeping that away from the story to keep it, concrete. I mean, like Crit said, it's not always a bad thing, but sometimes it's just like it makes you roll your eyes.
Because honestly, like, sorry, I was making a drink, guys.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I actually appreciate that question because it's actually fairly interesting because that also gets into the creative process as well. Because yeah, no, I completely like see where you're coming from, and like, at least for me, when it comes to like fan servicey stuff, to me, it's an indicator whether it really depends on how egregious it is. Like something like, I can't believe we're going to bring this up in the podcast. Eli, you might want to get a counter for this. Interspecies reviewers.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Your boy. Okay.
Yeah, look, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. All right. We have to talk about the I can't believe it's not hentai.
We have to talk about the show that overtook Steins Gate as number 2 on my anime list.
Before my anime list stepped in and said, "You know what? This is bullshit. We're not just letting you do this.
This is like Pingu in the City level bullshit." Like,
they declared hacks. They said, nah, hacks.
They basically looked at 4chan and
Be
said
right
no.
back.
Let's wait. So for people who don't have the context, Interspecies Reviewers is a show whose premise is 2 guys go around a magical fantasy world to have sex with all the different races and rank them.
It goes a step further though, Eli. They have like an entire party of adventurers doing that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's they have like the whole like shebang.
I'm sure they have this like shonen like enemies become protagonists, some sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't watch the show, so.
But like,
aren't there like on-screen sex scenes?
Yes, that happens in that happens in episode 3, like full-on penetration.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, that was when it got cut from every service because they realized this was actually porn.
Yeah, episode 3 was just like the moment that like someone in a boardroom had to awkwardly like go, all right, hold on. Guys, is this just porn?
Are we dubbing porn? Is that?
Yeah. Steve Bloom just like fades out of existence. But anyway, yeah, no, like for me, something becomes too fan servicey when it's almost outside the bounds or the tone of the show. But I think the most egregious offender of this is actually Full Metal Alchemist. Because there are just moments where there are like, especially in the original before Brotherhood, there is just some egregious ass fan service. And yeah, I know there is the outro in Brotherhood where it's just like it's literally like 2 minutes. Yeah, Winry with a towel, and it's just like all of the just just good civilization shots of her, and it's just like
where the sun
that's when it crosses the line. But like sex comedy, like Interspecies Reviewers, like I know what I'm getting into, so it's fine. I don't mind it as much. I mind it when it's just kind of shoveled into my anime, and I'm just like, oh god, why? Why is it in
I think
here?
that's a thing that comes up a lot with like My Hero, is that like that's why people like really hate Mineta, is because his whole thing is to be a pervert character in a show that is explicitly not about that.
Yes.
Like he is
Well-
not like he is the like he goes like so far like out of the sort of like typical realm that My Hero kind of goes in.
Mhm.
There is like fan service. There's like plenty of fan service in My Hero, but like I think the fact that like Mineta is there and he kind of like is the exemplification of all the problematic kinds of fans who are like coming to My Hero looking for that instead of looking for what the series advertises itself as providing.
Yeah.
I think that's what like rubs a lot of people the wrong way, because he is the like he is, I'm not sure what the right word is. He's the problematic. He's like the kind of fan that people don't like to acknowledge also watch anime.
Do you not like Mineta personally, Archer?
It's really hard. I don't hate him as much as everybody else does, but I do think that like a lot of what he does and a lot of what he is in the series is like too egregious, and is just like, and it just tonally doesn't really fit with most of like the other characters and what the show like ultimately tries to do. I think if he was toned down a bit more, like if every fucking sentence out of his mouth wasn't like I want to
fucking Opie, dude.
I want to bone Mount Lady.
Yeah.
Then like I think it would be more tolerable. But the fact that he has no personality outside of like he's a pervert, then I think is the bigger problem, is the fact that he's not a real character. He's just a methodology for the creators of the show to indulge in like perversion.
Okay.
So all right. So
real quick, I want to get my opinion on Mineta out of the way real quick, because I actually have a lot to say about him.
okay. All right.
I think I love the idea of Mineta because, okay, how I feel about it is I love the idea, but I hate seeing that goddamn character and every single word that comes out of his mouth, because the pretty much all of 1A, right? Like that's the class.
Yeah.
They represent different reasons for why people want to be a hero, and they kind of validate. It's like it's Horikoshi, right? That's his name.
Yeah.
Okay, Horikoshi. So it's essentially Horikoshi is saying some people have this reason to be a hero. Some people have this reason to be a hero. Momo wants to be a hero because she has a family reputation to uphold. Todoroki wants to be a hero out of like spite for the responsibility that he's been given as like the genetically perfect hero. Deku wants to be a hero because of all the people who can't be heroes and that they need a hero, you know, who knows that perspective. Mineta, his entire motivation for being a hero is for the bitches, right? Like he just wants all the women. And Horikoshi is essentially saying, okay, yeah, you can use that as a reason to be a hero. That's totally fair. But this is what you're going to come across as. You're going to come across as Mineta. And I hate every single scene, every single line that he's in, just because I find it like it's not entertaining to me. It's not funny. I think he's a goddamn asshole, and I want to just flip the page whenever I see his face. But I think the idea behind him is really interesting, and I love that he's portrayed and with so much like what is it? Like he's not likable, really. And a lot of people hate him. And I think that's totally the point. That's totally the point. You're not supposed to like people who are just heroes for the bitches.
Yeah, and like that's actually like going off of it. I feel like Mineta, again, like I think you hit the nail right on the head, Eli. Mineta is satire, like that. Not only like the hero who is in it for selfish reasons, but also for the fan who is there for just like the sexy women. And like, let's be real here. My Hero has a lot of weird sex jokes in it, and like Mineta is like Mineta is not a symptom of that. I think it's the author like calling those kind of fans out by creating a character who is literally just a literal voodoo doll for the author to punish and punch and poke and prod with.
It's
because you're not
supposed
supposed
to. Real quick. It's kind of like the end of Evangelion scene. The infamous end of Evangelion scene.
Congratulations!
No, not that scene.
big Tyrone at the end of Evangelion, just like congratulations.
Wait, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know the scene in question?
Are you talking about the hospital scene?
Yes, the hospital bed scene.
I don't. That I'm not familiar with.
Yikes. Okay, if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to talk about it. Evangelion is not something that we should just randomly start talking about it, but it's just
we need to like put a severe spoiler warning if we're gonna talk about Ava, because there are still plenty of people who haven't seen Ava.
True.
Is that just going to be like one of our Star Wars episodes? It's just to be like
Evangelion? Yeah, sure. Evangelion Day.
Episode.
Maybe in like 2 weeks after we do the Star Wars. Honestly, I'd be way more down to talk about Evangelion than Star Wars because it's just.
I still need to like rewatch Evangelion before I do that.
Okay.
Actually,
I have my thoughts fresh in my mind.
They actually expanded the watch together thing on Discord. If you want, like, we could just set aside a day, sit down, and like stream Evangelion.
Dude, I don't know if I could do that. Holy shit, I don't know if I could because no.
Just put a watermark on it. It'll be fine.
Well,
it'll be fine.
No. Not about like I'm not concerned with editing or anything like that. I'm concerned of having to sit down and watch all of Evangelion with people. That is not something I'm okay with doing. Yikes.
All right. You know what?
It's
fair enough.
Have you seen the whole original run?
Not in its entirety.
Okay.
I have a friend who just like, if I mention that I haven't seen something, he'll just go ahead and explain the entire thing, and including the spoilers for the ending, and talk about how much he likes it. Yeah, no, it's
imagine trying to explain
too.
2001: A Space Odyssey to someone.
Oh my god!
Like this is the anime equivalent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Fuck.
Yikes.
You know what? Actually having like movie clubs and stuff like that, like fuck, that would actually be a great podcast where we just like have like assign a movie for everyone to watch and then we all review it.
Mm-hmm.
Like fuck, I already know the movie that I'd probably assign everyone in here. We should all watch The Lighthouse.
Oh, I heard.
Oh yeah, like the new one with Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe.
Have you guys seen The Witch?
No,
like the
I
double
haven't.
V witch.
Yeah, the Vitch. Yeah,
the Vitch.
The Vitch. Have you guys seen it?
I have not.
It's actually really good. It's really good.
The Vitch? Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
I've seen The Lighthouse, and it was. My feelings for that movie like differ by the day.
Mm-hmm.
There are just some days where I'm just like, this is actually a fucking fantastic movie. It's the next Shining, and then I'll be like the next day, like, no, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's got.
If we ever do like a thing on satire, we need to talk about Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, hell yeah. That movie's so good.
Yeah.
That movie's
so good.
That movie is so fucking great.
Yeah.
Yeah. If honestly,
I'm not even like the kind of person who likes who knows a lot about the horror genre, but that movie was so freaking good.
Fuck, if I could get him into the fucking podcast one day. I got a friend who is just like fucking like cracks knuckles, is the expert on horror. So like, yeah. I'd love to bring him on, even in just like text chat, get his feedback on that. That'd be fucking great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, getting back on topic, we were talking about the creative process and how good writers steal and all that jazz before we got into fan service.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, like, if I'll say one more thing about fan service, it's just that like fan service is not inherently bad. I don't think so, because fan service could take many different forms. It can be naked, like it can be like chicks in bikinis on the beach. It can also be like it can also be like an awesome badass fight scene that literally does nothing. It is just there because hey,
fan service, like
awesome.
rule of cool action. Yeah.
Yeah, like have any of you guys seen the Gantz movie?
No.
The
like
fully
CG one?
CGI.
Yeah. I saw that.
Remember that giant robot that was just there fighting the giant monster?
Dude, that's what the entire movie was, I feel like.
Yeah. It was just
like literally
fan
when someone
service.
talks about that Gantz movie, you're just like, yo, remember that cool action event A when B happened? And it's just the entire movie.
And that's sort of like same with Pacific Rim. It was the whole movie was the movie was really just like encapsulating the fan servicey elements and what people really like about like kaiju movies and like giant mech movies and just stuff of that nature.
Exactly. I think for me, where fan service draws the line is, well, basically when you blank slate a character for the sake of it. I think fan service in a lot of ways can come down to character, and in that way, it's not fan service. I mean, goddamn it, I'm a Monogatari fan, and if there is like any property in which a writer is trying to like expose information about character, trying to characterize, trying to move the plot along through quote unquote fan service, that's 100% the property. I mean, the toothbrush scene, like really?
Yeah.
There's actually a point to the toothbrush scene is one huge joke that lies in character. And it is 100% fan service, but it 100% has a point, you know?
Yeah, so Critical actually just brought up a very good point. Like Yoko and Tamaki
from
Fire Force.
Oh,
Tamaki from Fire Force, Yoko from
Tamaki. Catgirl with Lucky Letcher. You're right.
I hate her. I hate her so much. I cannot like fully express how much I hate Tamaki.
Archer, I'm clutching my pearls right now. How dare you? How dare you?
I like Tamaki. I'm just gonna say that right now. I like Tamaki. I think she's okay.
Tamaki is okay. Yoko, I actually haven't seen.
I like Yoko a lot.
I haven't seen enough. I haven't seen Gurren Lagann enough to like make a determination.
I can talk about Yoko all day.
We need to like make a whole episode to talk about like the best girls and fit on.
Yo, look, best girl podcast. Yeah,
dude, no, God, no. That will be flamed more than our fucking Last Jedi podcast.
Yikes.
Dude, we will like cause wars.
I don't think I'm looking forward to that Last Jedi podcast anymore.
God.
I missed the whole thing. Oh my God, you're so stupid.
No, it's fine. We're still on fan service. Don't worry.
So
you're all good.
So let me put it like this, okay? So I love Yoko and I like Tamaki, but I think the roles of these two different characters within the first arc of Gurren Lagann and then pretty much all of Fire Force are very similar. Like, except Yoko's a lot more important. Like Yoko is one of the main three of the cast. She brings a lot of lightness to the first arc of Tengen Toppa. And she comes from a perspective that the other two characters don't come from. So in a lot of ways, it's fitting that she's something that the other characters would be uncomfortable around, would be not used to seeing. And you can say that it's expressed through the fan service. It's expressed through the idea that she's just kind of in skimpy clothing all the time. Because she's kind of a breath of fresh air, if that makes sense.
I think like there's a show that actually expresses that a lot more, Kill la Kill.
I haven't seen Kill la Kill yet, unfortunately.
That's like too much, my friend. My friend, that's a little too much.
But Kill la Kill like leans into it. It just
that's the whole thing of Kill la Kill.
Yeah,
it's
fan service.
Well, that's true. Actually, the whole clothing thing.
It's a show about fan service, right?
It's a show
about like the thematic resonance like that comes from that.
Yeah,
it's about like it represents like emotional maturity and just like getting like a better sense of the world around you and like becoming like and like keeping your individuality in that kind of like world.
Yeah,
like there's a lot like I was kind of surprised when I liked Kill la Kill as much as I did because like I knew it was like a fan servicey show, but and like I'm not like huge into that, but like I was like, okay, like it's a Trigger show, I'll probably like it, and I loved it. I loved the hell out of it. It was really good.
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but that's all I hear about. I hear it's like super good because it turns fan service into the core idea of the show.
Yeah.
No, and like
was it just me? Was Yoko? I mean, I thought Yoko stood out because she was tough. I was wondering what Ellie said. I mean, I thought she stood out because she was tough. I mean, that's probably just me, but.
Do we just want to like?
Come on,
But she's also really well written, mature.
Do we want Critical to just just go ahead, go ahead.
If we're gonna talk about Yoko, we should just like give the floor to Crit.
Yeah. Okay. Go for it. The Yoko expert. Let's go.
Crit, you have 5 minutes, and go.
Let me write this down in the timestamp.
You have 5 minutes to talk about Yoko.
What's happening?
You have
the
5
floor
minutes.
is yours. Talk about Yoko.
Yeah. You have 5 minutes. I am going to set a timer right now. Give me 1 second.
For the record, the longer this goes on, the more I'm convinced that I just have to do this video in parts.
Okay, 5 minutes begin. Go, Critical.
About what?
About Yoko.
Yoko.
Yoko and fan service and why she's a well-written character. Go.
Do it.
Yoko. What do I say?
Well, see, the thing is that Shino is gone now, so he's the one that like.
All right, so like within the context of fan service and within the context of character, why does Yoko stand out? Why is she more than just a fan service character?
So yeah, essentially, Shino was also saying like Yoko stands out, not because she's like a interesting character, but because she's tough.
Yes.
So that's your counterpoint, essentially.
Yes. So you could like type it in the chat.
Oh, okay. Type it in the chat. And yeah.
Oh, she can't hear us. Everything's cutting out.
Rip.
Boomernet,
dude. Boomernet. Boomernet.
Yeah. All right. Hold on. I'll type it in the chat.
Okay. You worry about that. And then
okay.
What was our next topic? Oh, real quick segue.
It's gonna be our sponsor. Is it gonna be our sponsor? Raid
Shadow Legends. Hell yeah. What do you guys listen to when you write? Do you listen to music?
Yeah. Depends. All right. So, all right. Critical. All right. I'm gonna type you the question.
I listen to music too.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ever. Yeah. That wasn't
mostly
classical. That was just to acknowledge who you were. That was not to like. That was just like because the people watching this later can't see the Discord chat.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that people know like who's talking.
It might actually be a good idea to have a little like screen capture right on the voice chat.
Actually, yeah, I was gonna actually recommend
that. Would be a good idea.
That would be a good idea.
Because then you can also edit it in. So like you can actually like take a screenshot and then have those things be implemented into the video as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's way better than actually going through second by second and like blipping people on like a little like act of something. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Hell no, I'm doing that.
Have you heard of Lucas King?
I don't think so.
I have not.
He is a really good musician and not musician, composer. Composer. You probably I'll send you the link. But this guy is really, really good. I've been following him for a couple of years now. Does look familiar?
Hold on, let me bring it up.
I don't think so.
I have not heard of him before.
Oh, could you not hear of him? He makes awesome music. You should have seen his playlist on all the mental illnesses he made composure on.
Oh, that's crazy.
Oh, okay. This looks interesting. I'll have to check it out actually. Like for me, when it comes to my music, it really depends on what I'm writing. Because like if I'm writing a fight scene, I'm gonna write music that's very involved and high pitch and very and I don't like action music, but I don't write it. I'm usually planning out the fight scene and how it's going to flow while I'm listening to the music.
Yeah.
And then I'll actually turn the music off and then write out the fight scene until I hit a stop, go out because Like I literally like stand up and I'm like actually kind of going through the motions because I have a few friends who are in HEMA actually.
Ooh.
So they've taught me how to
What kind of HEMA?
like I'm not exactly certain. I know for a fact that they practice like I don't remember the exact schools of fencing and broadsword usage that they come
I know.
from.
Oh, no worries.
But they have taught me like a few moves and how to actually wield a sword and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's actually very helpful for trying to figure it out. It also helps like just a little bit of an insight in how I actually write fanfic. Fight scenes. I draw a lot from the original Conan books. If you've ever read those before, if you want to get good, at writing fight scenes, read Conan.
Dude, I suck at fight scenes, so thank you.
Dude, read Conan. Read the original Robert E. Howard books. You'll get fucking swole at it.
One more thing. On topic of your music choice for a fight scene, there's another good channel to check out. Have you heard of HDI Soundy?
Have not.
No, I haven't.
This guy has an entire playlist dedicated to battle music.
Oh, that's sick.
Oh, this might be a good thing to check out.
There's one called epic music, there's a category called emotional music, and there's a category of beautiful music, and there's one for you called wondrous battle music.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So
the wondrous battle music has over 166 songs.
That's pretty good. That's really good, actually.
So Crit gave her opinion on Yoko. I'll read it out. So Yoko for me is like the embodiment of the series. She's sexy, good looking, but badass and very mature. She's a well-written character that goes past the fact that she fights in a bikini top and booty shorts. She's incredibly mature and one of the most level-headed characters in the group and is there to give a new perspective to Simon and Kamina in the beginning. She's ogled by the camera a lot at first because it's Simon ogling her. Once Simon meets Nia, the ogling stops because he's no longer immature and focusing on her assets, on Yoko's assets. Yoko dressing the way she does also helps with showing how tough she is. She's hot and she knows it, but isn't afraid to show it. She's comfortable with her sexuality, unlike Simon. If someone tries to touch her and she doesn't want it, she can definitely kick their ass. That's super powerful to me. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's really the core of what I mean when fan service is best when it doesn't blank slate a character, because you don't have to forget about what you know about a character when you see how good they look, right?
Or how they're so unafraid of being judged,
right?
Like that's a major character defining attribute. So like it's very interesting when you have stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and it's also interesting, like when characters like revert in that and become less fan servicey, and like that's when it gets into really interesting territory. Like one of the characters from Ruby, Yang, actually does that pretty interestingly. Actually, she like starts off like her first design, volume 1 through 3, is pretty fan servicey. It's pretty exposed and shows off her assets fairly well. But as she goes on in the series, that falls off. Really? I don't think so.
Which Yang you talking about?
I don't know.
I think it depends on like what you're looking for with like Yang. I think
I know a lot of people like had gripes about her. Like, I don't think so. Like, I think that was actually an improvement, because if anything, like that sort of character is kind of grating on me. It's why I don't like Sun. It's just like it feels fake. It feels like it's not a real character or a real person. So, like again, like give you a perspective. My waifu is Yennefer. So just like, yeah, Yennefer from the Witcher series.
I'll have you know that my friend has a Geralt body pillow.
Yeah,
I'm definitely not outing anyone who's specifically in the server, by the way.
Like, look.
They sell those?
Yes.
Yeah, like.
Oh wow.
Like, look, Yennefer is like definitely attractive and definitely in control, but she's also incredibly mature and serious, and that's what kind of makes, like, again, like definitely a dom in this situation, and I kind of like that, honestly, because it makes her an interesting contrasting character with Geralt.
I like that in a woman.
Oh yeah, I like a woman who can kick my ass, and like that's kind of the point.
Yes, that's the line.
Yeah, I know, right?
So, real quick, I think another way to illustrate our point about fan service is by counterexample, right? Like when I think of an example of anime fan service that 0% like has anything to do with any character ever is Hyoka. If anyone here has seen Hyoka.
I still need to. I haven't finished Hyoka.
Okay, so there's
I have not.
There's an ending for Hyoka. Hyoka is, it's like a really like low key high school slice of life / mystery show, right? And the two heroines of the 4 characters are 0% sexualized through the show. They are it is nothing like their value as characters is their relationship to the main character kind of, and how they kind of instigate change in the main character, how they push him to use his talents and break out from the mold that he was in the first couple episodes. And there's an ending to Hyoka that's just one of those like, slice of life endings where the girls sing the song. And the art on screen is all like them like in bed sheets only and like kneeling and like looking at the camera all sultry, like 0% Chitanda, 0% what's her other, Mayaka, I think. That is not those characters. You have to forget your entire impression of those characters when you watch that ending. That is, I think, one of the biggest counterexamples I have in my point against fan service.
Yeah, I think fan service, like, ultimately, like, I have a bit of a problem with fan service, and that in the fact that, like, fan service could be fun, fan service could be neat. Oftentimes, fan service doesn't service the plot, so what it ends up doing is it ends up being frivolous. It's for nothing.
Right.
And when that happens, like, you then lead to a problem that develops where you're putting screen time and effort and
Resources.
production time, which you have a limited amount of time for, to do this fun thing you thought would be cool that has nothing to do with the plot.
Yeah.
And as a result, like it visibly wears on the rest of it.
Yeah.
So like if you have any amount of fan service, you need to make damn sure that all your ducks are in a row before you could think of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would definitely say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I think in a general sense, I agree with that. I think that I think that fan service is something that you do when you have everything else like handled, when you have everything else, when you have like the rest of the elements of your story.
It's the cherry on top.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's something that you add on once the rest of your story is like
No meat to it.
finalized. Yeah, it's not something that you like use as the backbone of your story, unless you're doing something like Kill la Kill, where there's like thematic relevance to it.
Right. Yeah.
or something
That's
like
the exception.
or something like what, like I'm gonna bring up Monogatari again, or something where that show, a lot of the concept of that story is to characterize, build mystery, build plot by methods that it's literally tell not show the story. So Nisio Isin is going to use fan service, is going to use like long stretches of internal monologue to accomplish things that traditionally have to be shown, and he's going to do it. That's a big concept in that show.
There's actually a really great show that has a good usage of fan service, and also like just like in general awesome fight scenes as a way to actually convey the story that's being told as well. It's a 40K fan series actually that's actually fucking fantastic. The guy got a job out of it. It's called Hell's Reach. It's based off of one of the battle books, and it's one of the probably better ones. And what they do is they use color gradation and black and white filtering to sort of change the perspective of the characters to show who's viewing what. So when you view it from the perspective of the main character Grimaldus, he starts off with a very stark black and white filter on everything. So it's very distinctly like, this is good, this is bad, this is evil, this is right. But as the battle goes on, it becomes more gray and there's more color in it, as his perspective of the world is rocked and shook by the fact that he's having to face his own demise, in his mind at least. He is like 100% convinced, no, I'm like, literally the first words of dialogue in the entire show is, I will die upon this world. And it's him contemplating that, in the fact that like, yeah, no, I'm dead. I'm going to die here, and it's to be basically for nothing. I am going to be like another cinder in the wind. And it's him, the entire story, coming to grips with his own demise and coming to grips with the fact that, no, it means more than I'm making it out to be. It is going to be glorious, not because of the fight, but what I'm fighting for. So yeah, no, it's really fucking good. If any of you guys want to like get into Warhammer, like that right there, excellent. It's fucking fantastic. It's also all shot in, and you like, it's kind of obvious when you look at it, but it's so well done, you kind of forget about it actually.
I think.
Wait, is this the book?
It is based off of the book. It's based off the book Hell's Reach.
Wait, what was this? Animation or?
It's an animation. Like, you could look it up. I will actually put it in chat. I will put the first volume of Hell's Reach in the chat. Just fuck, it's awesome.
So to wrap up this whole fan service conversation,
yeah.
I think the whole. I think the whole. What?
One more thing. About the fan service thing. Is this only? Or is this? Do you find most fan service are more heavy in animation, in anime, and than non-anime media?
No, it's basically everywhere.
Yeah, I think my answer to that is no.
Yeah, it depends on like what you define as like fan service, as fan service. If you're talking about like explicitly sexual fan service, then
Definitely
of course
anime.
people are going to say that like, yeah, it's more common in anime. But like if you're talking about like the concept of pleasing your fans, like just for the sake of pleasing your fans, that's everywhere.
Yeah, like,
I actually, no offense, I have to disagree there, Archer. And I will point exactly to the movie series that does it the most, Transformers.
I was about to say everything Michael Bay makes is fan service.
But it goes further than that though, actually. Like look at 80s action movies, right? Like that is just filled with it.
Like Rambo?
Like not just Rambo, like look at the I hate to call it this, but there's no other way to describe it. Revenge porn movies. Like your Spit on Your Graves, your what was it? It had Charles Bronson in it, and like he like played this guy who like basically like before Taken before Taken, or the Equalizer before the Equalizer.
So
fuck,
is basically
Death Wish.
Is your point that Western media has a like lower ratio of content to fan service, or higher?
No,
higher ratio?
I would argue it depends on genre.
Okay.
Like action movies absolutely have a higher like fan service to actual plot ratio. Because like there are certain things, like, especially in the Transformers movies, which like have no bearing to the plot. They just want a fight scene to happen.
That's what most Michael Bay movies are about, is that like Michael Bay has like made it like apparent that he does not make movies for the same reason that like you would take someone like a Christopher Nolan or
Christopher Nolan,
or someone like Hitchcock. Someone like Hitchcock,
Right.
like they don't make movies for the same. They didn't make movies for the same reason that Michael Bay makes movies. Michael Bay makes movies because like he wants to give like people like him a good time. People who don't really like think about story or think about like an art sense. He doesn't give that kind of like artsy kind of person he doesn't like think about them when he's making his movies. He thinks about like the kind of working class white collar people that he hangs out with. He thinks about like people like him.
Yeah. And like I'll agree with Sonic. It's not always bad. Like sometimes I just want to watch an action movie. And like there's nothing wrong with that. And like it's important that we make the distinction that in the fact that like when we're talking about stuff like this, we shouldn't condemn it. Like we shouldn't just go like in our haughty towers and go, well, I just look down upon the peasants in their mindless fan service.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to watch something like dumb and just like relax and decompress.
Yeah, sure.
There's
Basically,
nothing wrong with
sometimes
that.
people just want to watch things blow up.
Yeah,
Pretty
like look, like some people just want to do that. Yeah.
That's why I watch Mythbusters, is because like 80% of that show is them crashing cars and making explosions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Mythbusters.
Dude, science.
Yeah.
It's a shame it's ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So we were talking about like we kept going back to fan service, and I felt like Eli was trying to talk music there for a moment.
Oh no, I
Like-
was just kind of bringing up something in the intern.
Okay, all right.
So
Well,
there's
actually,
actually a topic in the chat that we might want to get to soon.
Sure.
I think Crit brought up an interesting point about redemption arcs, about redeeming antagonists a while back. What do you guys think about, like, is there an antagonist that is too much to redeem? Is there a like
It really depends, right? Like if you have like a Dio level, just laughably, I'm evil because it's evil thing. Like, no, that's just gonna feel weird.
Giorno
It's
is
just-
the Dio redemption arc.
Yeah, yes.
Can a character
that's-
be redeemed
but that's
if,
it's
like,
why-
if it's written realistically and in
It's-
character?
Sure.
It's why
I mean-
it's why I love Giorno so much. I'm sorry, Giorno stand right here. But yeah, no, I agree with Critical there actually.
yeah.
Like it really depends on how well you write the character, but at the same time, you can have a sort of redemption arc for the villain that doesn't necessarily redeem them, but puts their actions within context and doesn't justify it, the viewer or reader or listener can go, okay, I get it. Like the Bloody Baron from The Witcher 3.
Okay.
The Bloody
Oh
Baron.
yeah, the domestic violence thing.
Yeah, but like it's put within context of the greater thing, where you end up going, I mean, you're an asshole still, but I get it. You're just pathetic.
What do you think?
That
Of
I
that?
think yeah.
You're
And I
just
think it's
like
the most important element of that. I think it's more important. It's not as important to like justify like what your villains are doing than it is to make your like audience understand like the reason that they're doing it. It doesn't have to be they don't have to have a good reason for doing it. They have to have a reason that you can buy. Like I was going to bring up like the difference between like the portrayal of Thanos in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame is like the difference that a lot of people didn't like is that they like kind of recontextualized in Endgame like what Thanos's mentality around like what he was doing is that he made it so that like I got what I wanted. I have to everybody in the universe, and I was expecting you all to be grateful for it, but then you weren't. So now I'm going to like use the Infinity Stones to restructure the universe in a way that like people will be grateful to me. And people didn't like that because it made him like more like it made his like motivations less like altruistic on the surface, or less like they said it was less interesting. But the way I see it is that it like recontextualizing what he wanted because like made his motivations in the first movie more I guess less problematic.
Yeah,
because like his whole like it recontextualized it to the point that like you're not like rooting for him anymore. You're not like rooting for this guy who wants to commit genocide on the universe.
Well, it's just that in Infinity War, no, Endgame. In Endgame, this is the younger Thanos that they fight.
It's Thanos younger by 3 years, so he was still on the train. It doesn't really change that much about like it. He doesn't really change that much in between. Like what I was trying to get at is that like people didn't really like the idea that like, oh, Thanos was like a narcissist the whole time. But I think that that actually helps ground the problems with like his like ideology. It's not enough just to say that, oh yeah, like he's wrong. There's a reason like why he's wrong. There's a reason like why like having the universe half like cutting the population of all life in the universe in half is wrong. And I think getting at that from a character perspective, which is I think what like Endgame does like the most. It grounds everything. It grounds its story in like the experience of its like core characters.
Right.
And
well,
go ahead.
Yeah, like what I think like ultimately like, because actually one of the topics of discussion was actually Marvel. And like I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe is this really interesting timepiece ultimately, because I don't think we're going to ever see anything like it again. Like I don't think you can do that twice. Other people have tried and they've failed.
Unless
and I think it's ultimately because the MCU, you can't treat it like every single movie is its own movie. Within the greater context of all of the Marvel movies, they work together in unison. If you were to take a single movie out and judge it on its own, it's gonna feel a little like you're missing some context, or does it feel as good? Because it would be like taking a single episode out of an anime and going, this is like, look at this, isn't this great? And going, yeah, but like there's a bunch of stuff that's happening that I don't get. I don't get why these characters are fighting or why they're doing this, because ultimately like the MCU is a massive episodic series, which culminates in Endgame. And like to be honest, to have a quick aside here, I don't think they should have continued. I think they actually should have just ended it there and just gone, we're done. We're gonna make some Marvel movies in the future, but the MCU is finished.
I think
because it's a mistake to continue it. What the fuck do you do after Endgame?
Yeah.
What are you gonna? Galactus? No.
I think Archer's point still stands in that I think I can shed some light on the reason why people felt that way about Thanos between the two movies. I think essentially, Archer explained that Endgame complicated Thanos's motivation, complicated the whole basically the big bad's whole reason for being a big bad. And I think the backlash in a way came from the idea that people didn't want to have that motivation complicated. They just wanted to fear Thanos. They wanted to see him as a strong man, as someone to be threatened by. And then when Endgame comes around, you're like, well, I guess there's more to this. And people didn't really want to think that.
Well, I think what happened was, especially for Infinity, like the transition between Infinity War Thanos and Endgame Thanos, I think the thing that we're missing is that in the fact that Thanos in Endgame is actually missing character development that Thanos in Infinity War actually gets. The Soul Stone scene, as like unimportant as the Soul Stone actually is, because like we actually never know what the Soul Stone actually
the
does.
Epitome of a MacGuffin.
Yeah, it just does a thing.
Yeah.
But what it facilitates is Thanos's commitment to that cause. We see how far he's actually willing to go for the snap. It's not just like it goes beyond just being like an idea he has. It is a conviction that character has, that he's like, no, this is absolutely the right thing to do, and I am willing to sacrifice someone I love to do it. That's how strongly I think, like, because like Gamora dies because of that. Yeah. Gamora dies to get the Soul Stone, and I think without that important bit of character development, Like, you're not able to actually fully contextualize Thanos as a character, and that's why in-game Thanos feels so flat, because he's missing that character development, and also that in the fact that, quite frankly, he also doesn't have a lot of actual screen time. We actually
Because
don't
he's
get
not the
as
protagonist of Endgame.
Yeah,
Like he was the protagonist of
exactly.
Infinity War.
Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, like, I hate to swivel because, like, again, we're actually yeah, because I just saw Critical's message there and I was trying to get to it. Should they be redeemed? Should be redeemed? Consider if they should be.
You mean should Thanos be redeemed? Is
Well,
that
not like specifically Thanos, but we're talking
Just
about
like
I brought up Thanos as an example of like
A redemption arc.
well, not even just a redemption arc, but a character who had their motivations recontextualized and had their characters sort of like seen through a different lens.
I think
that is actually interesting. It was just a video online that explained that Darth Vader, he was actually being skeptical of the Empire reinstituting slavery.
I heard about that.
And like people were commenting that this is like a flashback to that the memory of side of Darth Vader, his time as a slave.
Yeah,
that's pretty
I think that's actually like, I think Critical, you brought up a good point, right? Like, because there is a question of like, when does a character go too far? Like, when is there a point in which a character crosses the line and they're no longer redeemable? It's just like, oh well, shit. I call it the Horson Jr. moment. There's a character in The Witcher 3 who is just like an irredeemable asshole, even within context of other characters in the story, where like you get the RPG option to kill them, like in
Horson.
and Horson Jr.
Is that the mission where
It's the mission where you walk into the house he's staying at, and he just has like hooks like hanging from the ceiling, dead, blood dripping into pools.
It's like he
and
just like pulled a King Joffrey on them.
Yeah, no, it like that is the most like that's the fastest I've ever hit the press X to kill button ever in a video game. It's just like, oh, okay, cool, just gonna get that and wash my hands of that. And like I think it's the moment where you just like make the character into such a cartoon of villainy and evil that it's just like, yeah, of course you kill them. What there is literally no other recourse. You make them more bestial than you make them human in terms of their qualities, right? You just like you've erased any form of like I guess you could say relatability, because you can't at that point what Horson's doing, you can't really relate to that, right? You can't really relate to just like, oh, okay, you get your kicks off from killing hookers. Well, personally, I'm a duck man, but you know, we all have our own hobbies, right? I think actually a good character to actually contrast that with is Yoshikage Kira from JoJo's. Have any of you guys seen part?
Yes.
Just like, all right.
Yeah,
no.
I know about Kira, so I can like relate to that.
Yeah, like actually,
I was getting into the whole Witcher comparison.
Well,
yeah.
What do you think? On the topic of other characters' redemption thing, what about Dijkstra? Dijkstra.
Like he's not okay. Like he does.
Is he more of
he does politically backstab you in the back, but like again, like it doesn't go as far to like lose his human qualities. Like going on the Kira train for a second, like you like, yeah, he's a serial killer, but you get it. He just wants to live a quiet life. He doesn't want to be bothered. It's the pact he's made with society. Like, no, I'm serious.
I completely agree. I agree.
Yeah, no, it's just like, oh, okay, I see, I get it, I understand. You're still evil, but like, I totally get it.
Right.
You just you don't want to be bothered, and like that's your whole pact with society.
I think,
and like that's what makes him an interesting villain, though, because you ultimately go, I understand you, I get it. With Horson, on the other hand, there's no other recourse. There's no other way where I can go, no, I get where you're coming from. Because like at that point, it's like you've gone too far. So to answer your question, Critical, it's when the villain ceases, his villain's motivations or what they do cease to be like
condemn them.
relatable to us. Yeah, no, you
It
can't.
needs to have like that human element.
Yeah, there's no human element left. It's just evil.
Right. And in the way that she specified her question, whether would this character accept redemption, I think what we can also look to on like a more big picture point of view is whether a villain's motivations, like where that is in terms of polarity with the main character, if that makes sense. So if a villain's motivation is what example did we use? Zuko.
Darth Vader.
Well, okay, sure, Darth Vader. But I think a really good example there is Zuko and Zuko's redemption arc.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we can do an Avatar: The Last
Avatar.
Airbender podcast for all it concerns us, right? But
oh Jesus Christ.
Zuko's redemption arc is so powerful and so good because in order for him to be redeemed, his motivation just needs to change. That's it.
Yeah.
His whole motivation is I need my entire self-fulfillment is like prerequisite by my father's approval. That is all of Zuko's motivation. And as we follow Aang, as we follow Katara and all of these like Toph, all these characters, we come to realize that that's just especially Iroh, Uncle Iroh. We come to realize that that's just the wrong question to be asking. And so does Zuko.
Yeah.
And so Zuko's redemption is not, it's not that he accepts redemption, but it's that he accepts that his whole motivation makes no sense.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's actually a really good example.
Yeah. And that's why I don't necessarily think that any character can accept redemption, but more so it's does the theme that you're trying to tell, does it allow for compromise? Does it allow for you to change the goalpost a little bit in order to reframe this person who is a villain as sympathetic, as someone who can realistically attain their goals without having to, bend the logic of what you're saying?
No, that's actually a good point.
There's a Hello Future Me video that talked about this a little bit. Basically talked about like in order to redeem what?
I saw that video. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a good video.
Basically, it talked about the ways to redeem a character is that you have to like. There are 3 elements that make a character like a. I can't even remember what he talked about, but basically like there are 3 like elements to redeeming a character, and that's changing like their view of themselves, changing their view of the world, and changing like what they hope to attain.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
He's always super on point in Hello Future Me. Always super on point about stuff like that.
And Zuko like hits all of those. He hits like his like motivation changes, his view of himself changes, and his view of the world changes. And that's what makes and that's like what?
Can I also add that it didn't change on a dime? It took a while.
Yeah, it took a long time.
Yeah.
Build up.
The entire series to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it was instant change, it would be like, well, that was quick.
And it wasn't a straight line. It like he had relapses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he had to deal with his old daddy issues.
Yeah, and he had to deal with like the people who died because of him. He had to deal with the people that he committed atrocities against. He was confronted with those evils that he did. And he had to ask himself, was it all worth it? And in the end, he said no. And I think to loop back to the question of whether or not would this character accept redemption, I think characters have to be designed to, like, if their fundamental difference from the main character is that, like, that one aspect that Hello Future Me was talking about, like the way they view the world, the way they view society and their role in the world and everything like that. If their entire character is dependent on having one of those changes be polar opposite to the main character, then you can't change that. Right? Like if the I think it was Ever Faithful that brought up the idea of the Joker. You can't redeem the Joker because the entire point of the Joker is that he is diametrically opposed to Batman's view of human reasons and how and human nature and the goodness of
human nature.
Yeah,
it's why the comic, there was actually a very brief comic run where like they did a sort of DC what if, and it was what if the Joker turned into a good guy, and it was like,
was it terrible?
It was one of the most hated DC comics I think ever released.
Wait,
like,
it was
like,
White Knight.
It's called the White Knight. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like,
really good.
it really. I felt like for me, like it just like it robbed any like. It felt like it felt like weird fan fiction. The best way I could describe it. Because it felt like his Joker like has this like literally turns in the first issue, just turns into a good guy, and it's just like, okay.
Let me guess the root of the problem there. Let me guess that it didn't feel like Joker.
Yeah.
So
it felt like a reader insert of the Joker, as he's like, because like also it should be noted, Batman is also just evil in this.
Oh, yeah,
like just
that's
like
even worse.
Just demonstrably evil. Like just like nearly running over civilians and stuff like that, in just mad pursuit of the Joker. At this point, he's just basically just Conrad Kurtz, and it's just like, it isn't even like a slow turn, and it just comes off as just. It felt like they wanted to explore the concept, but they didn't want to put the time into actually exploring it fully. And like again, this sort of gets into the problems of stuff like fan fiction versus. When you get down to it, stuff like that inevitably just runs into the problems of, well, that's not what it's like in canon. And you can always kind of just brush that off and go, well, this is a reinterpretation, or well, this is an alternate universe of that. But that's still there. That's undeniable. That's what the property is. And you're always going to have to be in contention with that. You're always going to be kind of going, well, do I change it? Do I keep that? Do I modify it? And it's just better if you write your own original thing and go from there.
And also it's essential to the idea of Joker as a character to make him diametrically opposed to Batman in that specific way.
But like the thing is that they just flip it around.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why
and there's no appeal left anymore, right? Because these characters are so well designed to do their job.
Well, it's also because it just doesn't really change anything. It's just on opposite ends of the spectrum.
And it doesn't change. Yeah. It kind of resets almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, yeah, it's just like.
Anyways,
yeah.
We might want to start wrapping things up soon. Anyone have anything last to say?
Any final thoughts?
I mean, I had a question. I mean, like, about the whole podcast. Like, what is there a specific reason? Not to have a problem with it, but like, is there a reason why it's just being kept for 3 people in case other people wanted to go back?
Well, our goal initially was to use the first episode of this to like have it just the 3 of us, so that we talk, so that we kind of like give people like an opportunity to ask the questions that they want to ask. If we like for opening up to future episodes, we were going to have like one of the people who's involved, one of like the creators and stuff involved, like the 3 of us and one creator like per episode, and we changed it out like each episode just so that we weren't throwing a large amount of people like involved every episode, so that we don't have like, so that this doesn't turn into like 100-person like a 50-person Discord call every episode.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense. But like
it also
okay.
I'm sorry. It also just allows us to focus things up really well, because like the idea is that this is also going to like come with a project spotlight. And if the guy who's running the project is willing, we'll also feature them on the podcast. So it goes beyond it just being 3 dudes plus one other guy talking about a thing. It's 3 dudes and one other guy talking about a specific topic at hand.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Just that for example, today you guys were saying that we're gonna cover questions that everybody's been wanting to hear. And my question is like, if somebody couldn't make it, how would they hear it if it's not going to be shared with them?
It's going to be shared. It's going to be on
it's going to be shared. Yeah,
like we're going to be posting this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the entire point is to record and post it onto the internet, because it also like if the person who's like making the project is also looking to like, let's say, publish it or post it online, this is free advertisement, right? For like
I
a year.
Misunderstood. Never mind. Yeah, it makes sense. That's good.
Yeah.
I like the whole concept of it. It makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like to give you a perspective, for about a year between like 2014, actually 2 years, between 2014 and 2016, I actually ran a writing DA called the Science Project. You can still find it on there. It's still up. Everything on there is still uploaded. And like one of the big things we found that really helped our stories and whatnot was actually like commissioning artwork and getting promotions from other people to really boost our stories. And we actually we were fairly successful for something that wasn't just like lewd work on DA. No offense to people who post on DA, obviously, but like it's kind of hard. It's not a reputation. I understand that.
Got a huge viewer base. Is my probably the better way to phrase that.
Absolutely, it has a huge viewer base for stuff like that, and like it's still up. I'm thinking of posting stuff on there. It probably wouldn't be Skyfall, considering that the fact that I want to post that as a complete work. If I do stuff on the Scion Project, it's probably gonna be side stuff. If I'm being perfectly honest.
Wait, hold up. So that we just real quick, I want to wrap up the recording because this recording is like almost 2 hours, and it's actually gonna blow up Sony Vegas when I load it into it, or Premiere.
All right, got it. All right, so
just use Windows Photos.
Oh yeah, Windows. I'll use Paint.
All right.
Paint.
Windows Paint.
MS Paint.
MS Paint.
MVP.
Just use.
You underestimate the ability of Windows Photos to actually like do stuff like this. Like after my Vegas trial ran out, I switched to that, and I actually prefer it.
Well,
you have a very robotic voice.
I legit just cannot. My mind doesn't work around anything that isn't Final Cut Premiere or Sony Vegas. So I'm definitely gonna do one of those.
MS Paint.
MS Paint, 100%.
And sorry, someone's
my favorite type of drawing program.
Wait, hold up. Recording, people. We're still recording, and my computer's gonna blow up when I load it in. So,
all right. Fuck bitches, get money in the podcast.
Hold up. I'm gonna. All right. Anyways,
that's a good note to end on.
Yes, I agree. Let me just end it on some Biggie Smalls licks. All right. Hold on.
Yoko is my wife.
If you want to engage in this sort of incredible discourse that we
Where's
have,
your loyalty, Crit?
Yes, then hit us up. I'm Eli, and that was Archer, and that's
Project Development Hub.
If you like this podcast, hit that like button. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button, or I will punch you in the throat. All right.
Make sure to follow us for Minecraft.
Make sure to follow our sponsor, Ray.
All right.